a technicality. Think about your children. Think about all the Zimbabwean people who are suffering right now. Think about that. You know, it's really, really important that they judge this on the basis of facts rather than anything else. And again, as I said, look, their reputation is going to follow them beyond this court, this particular incident. And they have got to really think seriously about that, because at the end of the day, I really believe that they will not be able to sustain a result which is inconsistent with the will of the people. The wheels will come off the system, you know, whether they like it or not. So it's really, really important that these judges, on the basis of the facts, we're not asking them to do anything beyond the facts. If, as I said, more people voted at a polling station than were registered there, then there was fraud. You know, they don't even have to look at all these other things, just that simple fact. If there were more people that voted at a polling station than were registered there, then there was fraud. And I don't see how else they can rule. Even if we bring a response to the petition, which is 3,000 pages, it doesn't matter. Even if they invited some of us to go to the ZBC to record something, it doesn't matter. Even if, you know, there were instances where it looked like the police were fair, and so it doesn't matter. If more people voted at a polling station than were registered to vote, there was fraud.
Yes.
Yes.
Is it possible that the opposition is working on an old voters' roll that ZEC had the most updated voters' roll? Because I remember when the elections, just before the elections, the opposition has said that you didn't even have the updated voters' roll. Mm-hmm. So is it possible that the registered numbers that you have are not the same that the ZEC had?
Very good question, Violet. Then why is it that they just didn't provide that? So, you know, this is the thing. Here is a body which is constitutionally supposed to provide us with everything that we need, including an up-to-date voters' roll. If we're working with the old voters' roll, then ZEC is to blame. ZEC is to blame. Because then now we can't really establish the truth, can we? We can't.
They gave us that voters' roll.
Yeah.
One that we're relying on.
Yeah, they actually gave us the one that we're relying on, by the way. But, you know, supposing they didn't, supposing they hadn't even given us that voters' roll, it's their responsibility to do that. And this is one of the things that we are also challenging our friends in the press. These are the things that we need to press these people. If we don't have the up-to-date voters roll, why don't we have it? But to Chris's point, they gave us that voters roll.
Thank you. Next question.
Oh, that's good.
Can you say something about the spreadsheet in your application? You mentioned something that now the ZEC spreadsheet is not also available. Mm-hmm. What is that about?
What you're referring
was
to?
On the website,
yes.
That was supposed to have been accessible to everyone.
Right.
But now it's no longer accessible.
Right.
Did I get that right?
Yes. But let me be absolutely clear that everything that we are providing, Violet, is an attempt also to get to the incontrovertible facts. So the way that this thing is set up is that ZEC is supposed to provide, without fear or favor, the information that makes us come to the judgment that the election was free and fair. And we have these games that are played all the time. The things are put up and taken down. And then the website is hacked, and we really don't know if it was hacked and stuff like that. And that makes it incredibly difficult for the people of Zimbabwe to trust this process. And sometimes then you come up with an argument, and then, you know, what you're comparing it with it no longer exists, and then it's like, no, we never said that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. If more people voted at the polling station than were registered to vote, there was fraud. That's it.
Good. Thank you. We can take one more question.
Yeah, it's okay.
What is the process now going forward? Because no one seems to know what's going to happen next.
I love your questions, Violet, because they go right to what is the problem in our country. The problem, as I said earlier, for 38 years, there are some people who have monopolized knowledge of the processes, and you're really at their mercy. So they can judge in whatever way, and they can then say on a technicality, well, you didn't do this at this point, and stuff like that. It's high time we, Zimbabweans, said enough is enough. Because sometimes, even those who are in official positions don't even seem to know what is supposed to be done. I'll give you some interesting examples. During the nomination court, the first thing that the forms that were put up by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, we pulled down those forms and started filling out those forms so we could be ahead of the process. And then our guys would go to ZEC, and then ZEC would say, no, 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 don't use those forms. Those are not the correct forms. And we are going to put the form up. And then they would not put it up until quite late. And then you fill in the form, and then you're told as you're filling in the form, well, you need to bring your birth certificate, your original this, and so on and so forth. And it sounds like something which is small, right? But then, you know, you would go there to the nomination court, and then they would tell you, no, you needed to bring something else. But we asked, and you said this is the only thing that we need. They say, yeah, no, you need that. And by then, you imagine a candidate who has driven from somewhere and has left this thing 3 hours away. There were a lot of candidates who actually could not qualify for the nomination court because even the people at ZEC would give you various information. And we actually believe it was on purpose because the candidates for ZANU-PF did not have those problems. So there is a convenient, we don't know what's going on to disadvantage you. When it comes to this legal process, it's really pretty much the same thing. You know, there's no clarity and so on, so that there can be a loophole found to disqualify something on the basis of a technicality. And if you don't know what the technical requirements are, you're going to fall foul of that technical requirement. So there is an incredible need for us as Zimbabweans to really be educated on the process. And I'm hoping that as a result of this particular situation, we Zimbabweans can really know what is required. And I say this particularly also to journalists because, look, you're the fourth estate. You are really responsible not just for entertaining, but for informing people. It's important for you as journalists to really also get an understanding of the process and really share with the Zimbabwean people. That's the only way that we can protect our democracy. It's the only way. In fact, that's the only way we can bring democracy into this country and then protect it. So, yeah, you know, your guess is as good as mine, Violet, because they're going to come up with something that says, you know, this is the process, and then you will say, but I don't know, and then, you know, they will use the thing that is always cited, ignorance of the law does not absolve you, you know. So that's, you know, that's the challenge that we have in this country. And this is why we are fighting so hard. Let me also add something else. The reforms that we want, the electoral reforms, the arguments for electoral reforms always happen at the wrong time in this country. They happen the year you have an election. Instead of that argument being done now, if we want free and fair elections in 2023, we must right now, you know, start pressing for reforms now. All those people who are in the diaspora, don't get disengaged because the election is over. It is now that we must make sure we actually have the right to vote if you are in the diaspora, right now. And we must insist that ZEC makes those arrangements. If you saw in our petition, we also said, in the event that there is a rerun, there must be a structural interdict to make sure that ZEC can actually run a free and fair election. It's not just a question of saying, let there be another election. You can't have another election with ZEC being currently constituted the way it is. You can't. You can't have another election, a free and fair election, with ZEC's attitude being what it is right now. You can't. You can't have another free and fair election if the people seconded to ZEC are in the security services, in the military, in the government, and so on. You cannot. So there would have to be a structural interdict to make sure that ZEC can actually run, you know, a free and fair election. So the reforms would have to start before another election is done. They would have to be implemented. Otherwise, we're going to have exactly the same outcome and the very same contestation.
Okay, privilege finance journalist. Maybe if you have just gone through what was filed by ZANU-PF yesterday, from your assessment, there's always been the accusation of complicity between ZANU-PF and the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. From what you gather from the evidence that has been presented before the courts in what they filed, what would be your assessment? Could it lean towards supporting that argument that there is complicity between ZEC and ZANU-PF?
Yeah, so I cannot pretend that I have finished this. This was handed to us yesterday. It's quite a big document, so I did browse through it. And one of the things that I am very careful not to do is not to confuse myself unnecessarily. When I say that I'm going to be like a broken record, I meant it. It doesn't matter what ZANU-PF says. It really doesn't matter. And the other thing is, it doesn't really matter if, I conclude from this that, yeah, there is complicity between ZANU-PF and so on. That's good, if we can prove that. All I want us to prove is that there were more people who voted than they were registered. That's it. All these other things, right now, as far as I'm concerned, are not important, because if we can determine that, then we can come to the conclusion that this election was null and void. And then we can go forward, as I've said, when it comes to reform, making sure that in the next election, people will not look at the chairperson of ZEC as a ZANU-PF appointee. They will not look at her that way. If that happens, then we will have a result that is not contested. I said the other day, and I meant it seriously, it wasn't a joke. If you see a man who is married, buying lunch for another woman every day for 6 months, and they're not married, they're not related, they're not married, but never buying lunch for his wife, wouldn't you come to a conclusion that there's something here that looks wrong? So the appearance of evil is something that even at law, something that the law considers. If something does not seem as if it's proper, then there are many things that ZEC has done which are clear, they're not proper. So some of you would say the scarf is a neutral scarf that was created by a Zimbabwean, and we're penalizing a Zimbabwean who is very entrepreneurial, when we condemn people like Chigumba for wearing it. But you and I know that that symbol has actually been taken by ZANU-PF to represent them. So if the chairperson of ZEC is actually seen wearing that, then there's a problem. There's an appearance of evil and an appearance of collusion and so on. And when she goes to Russia, in the midst, sometimes I think ZANU-PF is really tone deaf.